Welcome everyone to the sunset service. My name is Pastor Sky. I'm here, the pastor, the head pastor, not the head leader. I feel like it's like North Korea. I'm the supreme leader of the Word Church. So you will follow what I say, right? You will do what I say, right? So I'm the head pastor here, and I've been here for about 3 years now. This is actually the first time we're starting a sunset service, and we've been testing and working this out for like the last 2-3 months. And now that the semester is going to be starting this week and the next week, we're going to invite a lot more students and try to get this room packed as much as possible every Sunday, right? Every Sunday. This is Sunday, right? And of course, the number one reason people should come is the food. Spiritually, right? Spiritually, right? Okay, just want to make sure everyone's on the same page, right? If we're like, oh, right? Minister Patrick needs to start spending more money on better food, right? So, of course, everyone, we're called the Word Church because the number one thing we want everyone to focus on is the words of God itself. Now, today I'm going to challenge you. Okay, it's going to be a big challenge today. I want to challenge you guys on your knowledge of the Bible or your knowledge of the words of God. Now, I'm not going to have a quiz, right? We're not going to have a quiz, right? I will ask you individually, but there won't be a quiz, okay? So, we're going to first, we're going to go into the scriptures today because today's the title of today's sermon is Know and Take Action. Okay, know and take action. And the scripture we're going to look at is in the book of Hosea. Okay, Hosea chapter 4, verse 6. Very powerful verse, right? And everyone, let's read this together. My people are destroyed from lack of knowledge. Because you have rejected knowledge, I also reject you as my priests. Because you have ignored the law of your God, I also will ignore your children. Now, I know this sounds really brutal, right? God says, I will ignore your children, right? It's enough that you just ignore me and I'll be fine because it's my mistake. But God's like, you don't do this, I'm going to ignore your children, okay? So this is something that's really, really important for all of us here because what God's talking about is my people are destroyed because of what? It's a lack of knowledge. Now, as Minister Patrick talked about in the intro, he said that it's about meeting the Lord. And when you're meeting the Lord, there's actually 2 words he used, and I'm going to ask you is which one are you doing? He says people should be waiting for the Lord, and then he also said that people should be preparing for the Lord. Now, the thing you have to think about in your head is there a difference? And the answer is yes, there's a big difference between waiting and preparing. Okay, waiting and preparing are 2 completely different things. Number one is waiting. Okay, what does waiting mean, right? Waiting means that you're sitting there kind of just, when are they going to come? When are they going to come? And you're just kind of waiting there, right? That's waiting for the Lord to come. But the second one he talked about is talking about preparation, right? Preparing for the Lord. Preparing for the Lord is much different than waiting because waiting, you don't have to do anything. You just wait. Preparing is a different thing. Why? Because preparation requires you to put in effort to do something to wait for someone, right? And the thing I want to ask you guys here today is, are you preparing or are you waiting? Okay? So what does this have to do with the scriptures? My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Well, people who are waiting will never read the Bible. People who are waiting will never look into the scriptures. Gosh, if you want me to wait for the Lord's second coming, if you want me to wait for the Lord, then how am I supposed to wait? And you start to look into it and say, this is what I'm supposed to do. People who wait kind of just wait. You see, the people who prepare, the one thing they do is they prepare with knowledge, knowing how to prepare for the Lord. So, here's a question I give to everyone here is, are you preparing or are you waiting? Okay? So the first question I give to everyone here right now is when the Lord comes, right? Because we all know He's coming, and that's a very general thing. So when the Lord comes, how is He coming? How? Like, what's your expectation? Right? What are you expecting when the Lord comes? That you'll say, oh, that's got to be the Lord. Right? What's something in the scriptures that you look at and say, oh, the scriptures say this. Oh, so when He comes, it's got to be this. Okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over one of the specific things. We're not going to go over the whole thing, but I'm going to go over one of these things. And we're not going to just look at the sign of the coming, But do you really understand and know how to prepare and wait for the Lord? Okay? Now let's go back 2,000 years ago. Now 2,000 years ago, Jesus came and he was the Messiah. We all know that. He is the Messiah. And when Jesus Christ came, the interesting thing was, why the heck did everyone reject him? Have you ever thought about that? Like, people rejected him. They really, you're not talking just rejection. You're talking like rejection went against him and they put him on the cross, right? It's not just a regular type of rejection. They went to the extreme. So my question here is, why did they reject him so badly when he is the Christ? When he came, he was obviously the Christ, but why couldn't the people, the very people that were waiting for him, why couldn't they receive him? Well, let's take a look at one of the signs of the Lord's coming, okay? We're going to look at the book of Daniel chapter 7, verse 13, okay? So everyone, I'm sure you brought your Bibles, but we don't need it because it will be on the screen, right? Daniel chapter 7, verse 13, here's one of the prophecies of the coming of the Christ. Right? This is the Old Testament. And it says, "In my vision at night I looked, and there before me was one like a son of man, coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days and was led into his presence." Now, how many have heard this before? Right? Some people have heard this. Okay, some people have heard, some people haven't. But this is a real prophecy. People were actually waiting for Jesus to come on the clouds. How do I know? Because they even asked Jesus himself. Right? When you look at how many people here have read the entire New Testament at least once? The New Testament. Have you read the New Testament at least once? Okay? So a lot of people have read the New Testament at least once. Now, my question to you is, in the entire New Testament, how many have you ever read about Jesus flying down on a cloud? Yes or no? No, most people, if you read it, and I encourage you, read the New Testament again, you will never see a scripture saying Jesus floated down on a cloud. And this is a thing that messed up a lot of people. It really did, right? The outcome was so different with what they wanted, right? You know what it's like when what you want, when you don't get what you want. It's completely different. It's like those days in high school. Oh, hold on, anyone in high school here? Just Gabby, right? And Minister Patrick. I guess literally, right? So, so you guys remember back in the days in high school, some of you are smiling and some of you aren't, right? I can tell your experience, what you had in high school, right? And in high school, yeah, I know, don't worry, please pass the tissues around, right? Yeah, please pass the tissues, right? So in high school, like for myself, one of the times, one of my expectations that didn't, one of the things I really, really wanted, this one time, okay, this is a really personal thing here. So I really like this girl, okay? And this girl, I was like, oh my gosh, she's perfect. And I was like, I think I'm going to make an advance. Oh, right? So I was like, hey, how's it going? And she's like, oh, hi, how's it going? It's like, hi. And then she's super friendly. And I was just like, whoa, this is pretty easy, right? It's like, maybe I'm not too bad. Right? Maybe I'm not a bad-looking guy. Maybe I got this good character, So we start talking and talking. We're on the phone and talking all the time. And, I thought to myself, oh, when should I kind of tell her, I like you a lot. I got to think to myself, when am I going to tell you this, right? So the whole time, and it's really weird because back in my days, I turned 40 this week, right? But back in my days, way back in my days, I'm probably double most of your ages, right? Way back in my days, okay? It's like the guys had to go first. The guys have to say it first. I'm not sure about today. It's very, very forward thinking, right? Girls will be like, I like you, let's date right now. I don't know if that happens or not, but in my days, never. Right? It's always the guy first. So, I'm like, okay, I just gotta say it, right? So I call her and I say, hey, I gotta tell you something. And she's like, I have to tell you something too. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. So what's going to happen is I'm like going, should we say it at the same time? We both like, I like you, right? So I'm thinking like it's going to happen like this, right? It's like, ready? Say it on 1, 2, 3. I was like ready, like, oh, this would be perfect, right? So I was like going, huh. So she's like, oh, so what is it? And I was like, huh. Do you want to see it at the same time? It's like, not, why? I was like, okay, no, just kidding. Well, you're ladies first. You can go first, right? So I'm like, my heart is pounding like crazy, like, oh, yeah, right? And I said, okay, you go first. And she's like, really? It's like, yeah, you go ahead. She's like, I feel really, I don't know if I can say this. It's really hard. And I was like, okay, all right, okay. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have a girlfriend tonight, right? And you can tell that these tears are coming out because they're the ending you probably know, right? So she says to me, okay, I'm going to say it. I like your friend. So what did you want to tell me? I think my friend likes you. And what happened was, in the end, was she liked my best friend. So the only reason she's like getting close to me is because she wants me to talk to my friend about her. So I was like, oh. So then at the end of it, what happens is, sorry, these are not real tears. They're just, when I talk really loud sometimes, I got like dysfunctional tear ducts. It just comes out. I just got to let you know this, right? So, and you guys got to understand this. You guys understand this, right? At the end of it, when she wants me to talk to my best friend, after it's not exactly what you want, do you even want to talk to him? And the answer is no, right? So what happens if it's not exactly what you want, you almost go to the extreme of not even wanting to do it anymore. You go to the point of rejection, right? That I would even say to my friend, well, there's this crazy girl. Yeah, she said she likes you. I don't know. What do you think? He's like, oh, I like her too. I was like, oh, darn it, right? And that's the thing. What happens is when it's not what you want, the thing that you want, if you really want it that much, and you really want it like that, but it doesn't happen the way that you want it, what happens is you even turn and reject it. Now, what does this have to do with God and Jesus? So let's turn to Matthew chapter 16, verse 1. Because, in the scriptures we looked, it said first that the Lord will come on the clouds. But whenever we looked at the New Testament scriptures, there was never a moment when Jesus actually floated down on a cloud. So one day, the Pharisees and Sadducees, they came to Jesus and they asked him a question. They, hey, Jesus, right? The Pharisees and Sadducees, the religious leaders come to him and they say, Jesus, show us a sign from heaven. You got to show us something. Because if you're really the Christ, if you're really the Messiah, you got to show us something. Give us a sign. Why? Because the scriptures tell us you got to be coming down on the clouds, but you haven't. Show us a sign. And what happened was, the way that the people were waiting, the way that they're waiting with the lack of knowledge, they wanted it a certain way to happen where they can easily look and say, oh, look, what's that? And then you see someone coming down on a cloud. You're like, oh, that's the easiest thing ever, right? And everyone say, look, it's the Christ. But when Jesus came, how did he come? You gotta think about this carefully. How did he really come? There you go. From his mom. All right, that's the first time I've heard that answer, right? From his mom, right? It's usually from God, but that's right too, right? Right? So the Messiah comes from his mom. And have you ever read a scripture that like he was actually born from a woman? Have you heard that? He was born in Bethlehem, crying in a manger. Right? Now, tell me how weird this is if the Christ is supposed to come on a cloud, but then you hear that, oh, by the way, he was born and even had an umbilical cord. He even had an umbilical cord. And you're like, what? That doesn't make any sense. He's supposed to come down from... Oh, he had an umbilical cord. What does that mean? You can't come from the sky if you're attached. And they couldn't figure it out. Right? You couldn't figure it out. It's like, well, this doesn't make any sense. And because it was so far off from what they thought, they looked at it and say, okay, this doesn't make any sense. And what happens? Just like that girl telling me to go talk to my friend, I began to reject it. I began to not even want them to be together. I didn't want to see her face every day with my best friend, right? And I was so upset by it because it wasn't the way that I wanted. When you look at yourselves too, when you're waiting for the Lord to come, the real question comes now is are you really prepared? Or do you lack that knowledge? Or do you just kind of wait? Yeah, when he comes, he comes. You know, he's going to come anyways, right? So wouldn't we know? So my question to you is this. When Jesus came, when the Messiah came, when he first came out in his ministry, did thousands of people flock around him? Or did he just kind of come out and people are like, who's that? Who's this guy? There was not a single person around him. He had to go to people and say, hey, I'm here. He had to do it. He actually had to go to people and preach the gospel to them. And slowly with time, one by one, more and more people began to follow Christ. It was much different than what people wanted. What did people want? They wanted a king, right? Not the king that we were expecting in Jesus, but an actual king that would come with a crown, with a crazy big sword, like chopping people down, and the enemies would all be destroyed. And that's what they were expecting. That's what they wanted. But instead, you had a humble, lowly person who preached the words of God. You see, in order for us to really understand the words of God correctly, in order for us to really understand, man, how am I supposed to prepare? How am I supposed to be ready? Remember, the thing that destroys God's people, right? Hosea chapter 4, verse 6 doesn't talk about the outside people. He says, my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. My people. It's not anyone else. It's his own people. Who were the ones that rejected Christ? It was his own people. Who were the ones that killed Christ? It was his own people. Who are the ones that couldn't recognize Jesus? It was his own people. It wasn't anyone else. The Messiah, the Christ, the person we're waiting for more than anyone else, are you waiting or are you prepared is the real question. Or are you lacking in knowledge, or will you be destroyed by that lack of knowledge? Let me show you how easy the scriptures, with a lack of knowledge, how easy it is to misunderstand Jesus. In Daniel chapter 7, verse 13, we read, he says he's going to come on the clouds. And that's like, oh my goodness, come on the clouds. But there's other verses like Micah chapter 5, verse 2, right? And in Micah chapter 5, verse 2, this is another prophecy. And what does it say? But you, and does everyone know that town? When do we sing that songs about Bethlehem? Christmas. Can anyone sing one of those songs about Bethlehem? Do. Right? There's another one too. Oh, no. I was thinking, oh, Christmas tree for a second. Oh, Christmas, Bethlehem. Wait a second. No. Away in a manger, no crib for... Is there Bethlehem in there? To Bethlehem. All right, cool, right? To Bethlehem. All right, thank you very much, right? So what we hear is we see that there's these songs written about Bethlehem too. Why? Because Jesus came from Bethlehem. Why? What does Micah chapter 5 verse 2 say? It's basically telling you straight up that Jesus has to come from Bethlehem. He has to come from a certain place. Which means what? How the heck do you come from a certain place and come on the clouds at the same time? It makes no sense. In Isaiah chapter 7 verse 14 is exactly what Gabby said in the back. Where did Jesus come from? Jesus came from a mom, right? It basically says he got a mom. He's going to be conceived and give birth, right? He's going to be given birth. How can you give birth if you come on the clouds? And I tell you, the only possible theory I have is that Mary was ultra bloated and shot Jesus out into the sky. He hit the cloud and he came down. And that's the only thing I can think about. Right? I don't know what else. How could it be? How could you be born of a woman in the town of Bethlehem and come on the clouds at the same? You can't. You can't. Sorry, that was a little bit extreme. Yeah. This is the first sunset service, so forgive me for being excited. I had a cup of coffee right before I started this. Okay? So that's the thing you have to think about. Right? No snorting, please. Good God. Right? We got to think about this. Right? My people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. So I'm going to give you one hint. Right? This is going to be a big hint for all of us to really think about and be challenged by. Okay? So go back to Daniel chapter 7, verse 13. And in here, you're going to actually see what it says. Right? It's going to say something very interesting. It says, how did he receive this prophecy? In my vision. Okay, in my vision. So everyone know what a vision here is, right? It's like you kind of see something like a picture, a motion picture going by, right? It's a vision you see. Usually you're not sleeping, right? Because sleeping is a dream. A vision is when you're awake. Sometimes with your eyes open, sometimes with your eyes closed. And you see a vision. And he saw the vision of someone like the Son of Man coming on the clouds. Now, vision. Everyone have that in your mind? Keep that word in your mind, vision. We're going to go to this next verse. It's Hosea chapter 12, verse 10. And this is where it gets very interesting. Because this is what God says, how he speaks to the prophets. It says, I spoke to the prophets, gave them many, and told through them. And this is something you have to start thinking about and challenging yourself in. My people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. It means it's something you don't know. You don't understand. But when you look at the scriptures, it doesn't really make any sense. And you wonder to yourself, no wonder the Pharisees and Sadducees couldn't recognize Christ because they wanted him to come the way that they wanted. But they had a lack of knowledge, and they were destroyed by that knowledge. And you look carefully in the scriptures, and it says, what? I had a vision, and that vision showed me a man coming on the clouds. And then God speaks to the prophet Hosea and says, hey, guess what? You know those prophets, I spoke to them. And how did I speak to them? Through visions. And through those visions, I spoke parables through them. Now, what am I saying? No, what I'm saying to you is I'm challenging you now. It's the real challenge. If the people are destroyed by a lack of knowledge, then the real challenge right now is, why doesn't it make sense? Wait, that's a little bit interesting. I wonder what that means. If we don't prepare and you just sit waiting, not reading, not studying, not understanding, then even when he comes, you'll have no idea, just like Israel did when Jesus came. You have to reset your hearts and your minds, right? You have to reset them. Because the question now is, well, what the heck does it mean then? Is it really clouds or not? Is it or isn't it? Right? Well, now we have multiple options. And what we have to do is we really, really have to study it then. It's like, then what does God really mean? And what I want to do is, I can't really do it here at this time. But one thing I really encourage everyone else too, especially if you come to a church called The Word, the one thing we really need to study is the words of God. Right? For those of you who really want to understand this even better and in a greater way, what the heck do these clouds mean? Like, is it really saying this? What does it mean? Is it really a parable? I'm not sure. Then I implore you guys to come out to Bible studies, right? Study. Don't be destroyed for a lack of knowledge, right? For us too, every Thursday nights at 6 p.m. here, we're going to have Bible studies going over such questions like this, right? Deeper questions, preparing ourselves. Right? Not just this type of thing. We're going to have many different topics we can talk about, and you can bring all your questions too. And if you can't come on Thursday, I really ask that, come out and learn, right? Set up a small group study. We have small groups going all throughout the week on different campuses and here at church. The one thing, especially all of us here, is, every church has to have that one characteristic that separates themselves from everyone else, right? And the one thing I want to tell you right now, especially about our church here, ours is the words. Being really centered on the words of God, studying it, knowing the scriptures really well, and making sure that we are not destroyed for a lack of knowledge. Right? There's tons of questions out there. Clouds, is it really clouds? How is it going to come again? The reason why this question about clouds is so important, because it comes up again in Matthew chapter 24, verse 30. In Matthew 24, verse 30, what does it say? It says, then will appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then all the peoples of the earth will mourn when they see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. This is Jesus talking about the second coming. The prophecies are the same. We need to understand. Why? Or else we get destroyed. We cannot be destroyed for a lack of knowledge. Because if we do, then what does God say? Then I'll even reject your children. Knowledge is that powerful and that important. Make it a habit to read the Bible every day. Make it a habit to learn the words. And I really hope that everyone here, you have to know first before you take action. Don't sit and wait. Waiting leads to just waiting, and sometimes you actually miss the very thing that you were waiting for. Being prepared is what? It means that you will not miss that chance, and you won't miss that moment. So at this time, I really want everyone to really think about it. Close your eyes at this moment. And I really want to think about how much we've prepared and how much we've made ourselves ready. Are we the people in the scriptures that God says that will be destroyed because we lack that knowledge, we don't understand? Or are we going to be people that are just prepared inside out, that when the Lord comes, we'll recognize Him right away with open arms? Let's make sure that all of us here, even for myself, I'm going to be honest with you, grandfather's a pastor, dad's an elder, mom's an elders. And even until I was 20, I probably never read the Bible once. Didn't know any of the scriptures. And I thought, I'm here already. I'm the pastor's kid, right? So it's easy. Just get me ready. I should be fine. But even myself, when I started to learn the word deeply, you need the challenge. You need the challenge of faith. You need to walk it the right way so that when we meet the Lord, we will not meet unprepared, but you'll meet Him absolutely prepared in the way that He wants.
He can take you where you wanna go. He can take you where you wanna go. He can take you where you wanna go. He can show you what you wanna know. He can show you what you